The South China Sea was once a shared space, connecting fishermen and traders from many nations. For centuries, there were no hard borders, just open waters used by all. The idea of one country owning the entire sea was unheard of. This changed in the 20th century, as nations began to formalize borders. After World War II, new countries in Asia sought to define their territories. In the late 1940s, China drew the now infamous Nine-Dash Line, claiming most of the South China Sea. Other countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia soon made their own claims. The sea, once open, became a patchwork of overlapping claims. The discovery of oil and gas beneath the seabed raised the stakes. The sea was no longer just about fishing and trade. It became a competition for resources and power. National pride and economic interests fueled the disputes. Quiet disagreements turned into open confrontations. By the late 20th century, the groundwork for today's tensions was set. The South China Sea became a flashpoint, not just for local fishermen, but for entire nations. What began as a shared heritage is now a high-stakes contest. The disputes of the past have become the defining conflicts of the present. This is the backdrop to the tense situation we face in 2025. The South China Sea is a global trade superhighway. Billions of dollars worth of goods, phones, clothes, electronics, pass through these waters every year. Any disruption here would ripple across the world, raising prices and halting production. Beneath the waves lie vast reserves of oil and natural gas, critical for the energy needs of China, the Philippines, and others. Control over these resources means economic security and independence. The sea is also one of the world's richest fishing grounds. Millions depend on its fish for food and jobs. When access is restricted or fish stocks dwindle, communities suffer. The conflict isn't just about territory, it's about survival for countless families. Militarily, the sea is a strategic gateway. For the Philippines, it's about defending its coast. For China, it's a launchpad for projecting power into the Pacific. Whoever controls the sea controls vital trade and military routes. This makes the South China Sea a chessboard for global powers. The stakes are economic, strategic, and deeply personal. The Philippines and China see the South China Sea through very different lenses. China claims almost the entire sea, citing historic rights and the Nine-Dash Line. It argues its people have used these waters for centuries. The Philippines bases its claim on international law, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. Under UNCLOS, countries have exclusive rights to resources within 200 nautical miles of their coast. The Philippines says key areas, like Reed Bank and parts of the Spratlys, fall within its exclusive economic zone. The core dispute history versus law. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines, declaring China's Nine-Dash Line had no legal basis. China rejected the ruling and continued its activities in the disputed waters. The Philippines insists the ruling is binding. China calls it irrelevant. This deadlock leaves no room for compromise. The result, constant tension, with each side refusing to back down. The legal victory for Manila has not changed the reality at sea. China's ships remain, blocking access and asserting control. The world watches as the standoff continues. The conflict is now a test of international law versus raw power. In 2025, tensions between the Philippines and China have reached new heights. Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels now aggressively block Philippine ships, especially near Second Thomas Shoal. Filipino Marines stationed on the BRP Sierra Madre face dangerous resupply missions. This year, Chinese ships used water cannons at close range, damaging Philippine boats and injuring crew. These incidents mark a shift from shadowing to direct confrontation. China has expanded military facilities on artificial islands within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Manila sees this as a move to cement permanent control. In response, the Philippines has embedded journalists on patrols, broadcasting confrontations to the world. This transparency campaign has rallied international support, but further angered Beijing. The cycle of escalation and distrust continues, with each side digging in. The South China Sea conflict is fought in the gray zone, between peace and open war. China uses its massive coast guard and maritime militia to swarm disputed areas, intimidating rivals without firing shots. Filipino fishermen at Scarborough Shoal face daily harassment, loud horns, spotlights, and dangerous maneuvers. Water cannons, though non-lethal, are powerful enough to damage boats and injure crews. China claims these are law enforcement actions, but they're designed to intimidate and control. The Philippines can't match China's fleet, so it fights back with transparency, releasing videos of confrontations to win global sympathy. New patrol vessels from Japan and the US now escort Philippine supply boats, raising the stakes of every encounter. Each standoff is a test of resolve, with both sides refusing to yield. The gray zone is unpredictable. One misstep could spark a wider crisis. For Filipino fishermen and Coast Guard crews, this is a daily struggle for survival and sovereignty. The world's attention is fixed on these tense waters. The Philippines is determined not to be bullied out of its own backyard. The conflict is now a battle of nerves, technology, and international opinion. The front line is everywhere, on the water, in the media, and in the court of world opinion. The world is watching the South China Sea. The United States, bound by a mutual defense treaty, has pledged to defend the Philippines if attacked. In 2025, joint military exercises and freedom of navigation operations send a clear message to China. Allies like Japan, Australia, the UK, and France support the Philippines and the 2016 tribunal ruling. Japan provides patrol vessels and radar. Australia joins joint patrols. These actions draw a line, international law and free navigation versus China's claims. China accuses the US of interference and warns against foreign involvement. Southeast Asian nations are caught in the middle, balancing economic ties with China and security partnerships with the West. The South China Sea has become a global flashpoint, with the world's major powers now involved. ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, struggles to take a unified stand. Some members, like Cambodia and Laos, are reluctant to challenge China due to close economic ties. Others, like Vietnam and Malaysia, share the Philippines' concerns, but prefer quiet diplomacy. At recent summits, ASEAN statements have been cautious, avoiding direct criticism of China. Despite this, individual countries are acting. Vietnam upgrades its coast guard, Malaysia and Indonesia push back against Chinese incursions. All face a dilemma: protect their rights without risking economic fallout. The region is forced to balance trade with China against the need for security. Many quietly strengthen ties with the US, Japan, and Australia. The South China Sea dispute is a test of ASEAN's unity and the region's ability to manage China's rise. The choices made here will shape Asia's future. The future of the South China Sea is uncertain and risky. The most likely scenario is a tense stalemate. Gray zone tactics, constant standoffs, and the ever-present risk of escalation. A single incident could trigger a wider conflict, possibly drawing in the United States. Diplomacy remains the only path to lasting peace, but it requires real compromise, especially from China. A binding code of conduct and cooperation on shared resources could build trust. The conflict is about more than territory. It's a test of whether international law or raw power will shape Asia's future. The world is watching, and the outcome will affect global stability. The next moves by the Philippines, China, and their neighbors will decide the fate of the region.